So most of us have been taught that if we could just earn a little bit more money, then all the worries would stop. Well, my guest today has spent over 20 years proving that actually this is not true because the worry was never really about the money. Welcome back to It's Not About the Money. I'm Catherine Morgan, your podcast host. And we're going to be looking at money as something far more human than just numbers on a page. Money, as we talk about on this show, is very much a mirror of how we feel about ourselves. And so I am delighted to invite my guest today. And years ago, he built a spreadsheet in a very tiny basement flat to keep his young family afloat. And it grew into this incredible organization called YNAB, You Need a Budget, and it's used by millions and millions of people all across the world. His new book that's called Never Worry About Money Again, and that obviously sits very closely to the heart of this podcast. So, Jesse, a huge welcome.
Yeah, happy to be here.
Thank you so much. And I love to interview authors, and I particularly was excited to interview you, Jesse. As I said just before we hit record today, I came across YNAB actually in my 30s when I was going through my own journey around money. And I love everything that the organization stands for in terms of giving every dollar or giving every pound a job. And I know that this book for you is going much deeper into why people worry about money. How can we stop worrying about money? And so with that lens of your book focusing on how to be good with money, have you always been good with money? I'm curious.
No, not even. I thought I was. And I've always been interested in the subject. So money, I remember as a 14, 15-year-old, my dad gave me The Millionaire Next Door, which was a very popular book back in the day. And I remember reading I should own a Ford F-150 at some point if I want to be a millionaire, or they don't wear Rolexes the way you might think. And so it was like a new frame, but I just remember eating it up. And so I've been interested in the subject, but when I entered university and started doing accounting, no surprise, money related, I wanted to learn about kind of the language of business. And I thought that would be a good launch pad. But my main goal for starting in accounting was I noticed that they had a job placement rate that was 99.5%. And so I thought, okay, well, that's how you get a job. And that was my inspiration, get a job. So all along the way, I'm getting into the accounting program and doing that. And Julie and I marry young, and we're both still in school. And things were super, super tight. I mean, we're making $10, $11 an hour, both part-time. And we had set these goals for ourselves. And I go into this a little bit in the book around what everyone says you're supposed to do with money, we were supposedly doing. We were scraping and saving and just living on so little. And I remember walking past the student center at the university, and there were these old-fashioned donuts. I don't know if you have them in the UK, but if you put them in the microwave for 10 seconds, they're perfection. Yeah. And it was, at the time, this is 20 plus years ago, it was 50 cents for one of these donuts. And I remember walking by thinking, I want one. And I was 20 something, so I could eat as many donuts as I wanted. It didn't even matter, And I walk by and I'm looking at that and I think, I can't even have that donut. We can't even do 50 cents. And it was this moment of clarity where it was something is wrong. I'm supposedly doing everything right, but money feels like this burden. It felt it felt so constraining, suffocating even. And we realized that we weren't having money do what we wanted. We were just kind of letting everything tell us what it should do instead. And we were doing all the right rules, like save and, frugal and all those things, but it didn't feel like us at all. And sometimes people will bristle when I say, "Oh, you're probably just a little, you're probably bad at money. You just got to get good at it." But it's like being bad at swimming. The way you get good at it is you just learn to swim. It's just a skill. There's nothing special or magical or moral about it. You just acquire the skill and you change everything. So we slowly did. Julie and I did. Yeah.
How did you go about doing that when you had these kind of shoulds, as you suggested there, that you should be doing this with money or you should be spending this with money? How did you go about changing that?
We flipped it around, and Now, to be clear, we were not making more money suddenly. It wasn't like, oh, we came across an inheritance and then all our problems were solved. That just gives you other problems. But we just flipped it and we said, well, what do we want our money to do? What's some of our money for that's just for us? And it wasn't anything crazy, but we prioritized health and fitness. And so we said, we're definitely going to spend some money on a gym. And we prioritized a weekly date night. At the time, we had no kids, but even then, with busy school schedules and part-time schedules that bled into the evenings and being newlywed, we're like, how do we start good habits as a couple, right? And one of them was just a weekly date. A lot of the time, that would mean like once a month we would get a pizza, but we made sure to call it out. I mean, it was not a lot of money. It's so interesting
Mm.
um, to note that like once we took control, we weren't suddenly saying, oh, forget it. Let's just charge things on the card because we want these things. But we were acting with intention. We were being agents, we were affecting some change for ourselves. And it was just little bits of money because we didn't have a lot, but it felt so, so different for us. And it's that assertion, that intention that where you find what you can control and you exercise that psychologically, that's just where the win is. And it was for us.
And did you find that you were like automatically speaking from the same page when it came to making decisions about where you were going to
Oh,
prioritize? Because
we're still figuring that out. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. We've been married 23 years and I'm the spender. She's naturally just less inclined, but we've figured out where our hot spots are. Um, where it's like, oh, we gotta make sure that we understand what we're going for here. Like I will, fitness equipment. I'm just like, how could you have too much? Like you never know when you might need it. And we have this cool little home gym, and so I just am like, oh, always more. And she's just like, it just doesn't move her. But travel, she will go all in on travel with the family because she's like, that's just it lights her up. Like she looks forward to it. I remember one time we had a flight delayed out of I think South Carolina, and like we had 9 people. We have 7 kids, so it's a group of 9 people. So they can't just be like, oh, we'll squeeze you 9 people on the next flight. They were like, it was Friday, we not missed the flight, it was delayed from a tornado, and they're like, we can get 9 people in Monday evening. Julie was so elated that our travel was longer, and I was like, I got to get to work. Like I don't know about this, but she was just happy as a clam. It was kind of annoying, actually, how happy she was. But that's her thing, is she loves it. So we've
mm,
we've really settled on those. And I just know if there's money in the plan for food, where she doesn't have to just scrimp like she did in the early days, and if there's money there for travel, she's pretty content. She grew up in very, very, very modest circumstances, that has brought other stories along with it that we've worked through over the years. Um, but in that way, we're still learning about each other. And money is a lens through which you can learn about your partner and
mm.
find out what makes them tick and what gets them going, what helps them, I don't know, express themselves more accurately. So it can really be a method of, yeah, getting to know them at an even deeper level.
What early experiences did you have that you were able to share with Julie that helped you to deepen that with your own relationship?
The one that I grew up kind of like dead center middle class, and where she grew up, I don't want to get too much into her story, but like she had a situation sometimes where it was like you open the fridge and you hope there's some food in there, kind of like single mom, teacher, that kind of environment. So the really cool thing that we've learned over the years actually is around generosity. And
Mm,
her natural instinct is to protect. And I don't think I'm speaking out of turn. I think many women, if you were look at a bell curve, a lot of them are wired for safety and protection. And so you'll see that come out of her, I think, biologically. And then you also see it come out of her from that environment where she lived. And so that's been something we've had to work through, where I would notice her protection mechanism would kick on prematurely or stay on far too long. And
Mm.
it's been interesting to work through. And I'm no therapist, I'm no psychologist, psychiatrist, nothing of the sort. And so it's just one man, one woman talking and trying to hear each other and understand. But that's been probably, I would say, our most intimate money moments are around those stories and kind of the wiring that we've gotten. For me, it was
Mm.
frugality. Like frugality
Oh,
was just kind of it just it's just good on its own. Just on its very face, it's just good. Use it up, wear it out, make it do or do without. That's this phrase that comes from like the pioneer heritage around here. And so I had my own moments where I was like, I really want this nice, luxurious Tesla. And I literally had a therapist tell me, like, you are being weird about this. Like, you're being real weird. You should buy it. And I had this story about, no, I'm the guy that drives the really old Honda Civic kind of pridefully because I
mhm.
can so easily afford it, but haha, the joke's on everyone else. And it was actually this really prideful kind of negative thing. Um, so yeah, that's my own story that I brought, you know. And it's such a fascinating place to look at money, not from a place of like chores and to-dos and bills, but more like how we express ourselves, the stories we bring.
Yeah, I love that. And thanks for sharing that with our listeners. It actually reminded me of I'm a twin, and my
Mm.
twin brother had to go and get therapy when he bought his very first motorbike. Because even though he
Ah,
had enough to buy it, it was like, well, how come I get to have it when other people can't? And it was this
mhm.
huge, like, justice measurement of how he or his perception of spending. Whereas I was the complete opposite. I would just buy 7 of the same motorbikes.
Yeah.
And it was interesting that we grew up in the same environment. You know, we had
Yes.
similar friendship groups, same parents, all of those things. And yet we had a completely different relationship with money. And I think one of the interesting stories for him was that when he was about 6, we went to this castle in the UK and we were climbing this hill, and when we came down the other side, he dropped his like a money coin. It was almost like a
Oh.
plastic container that hung around his
Mhm.
neck, and he dropped it down the drain. And I remember my mum being like, "Oh, you silly boy, you always lose things. Like, you're no good with
Mm.
looking after money." Obviously not meaning to cause any harm at all,
Yes,
but
yeah.
it's interesting that the things that we learn and things that we hear can influence our relationships so much. And I want to dive a little bit into this because I've got my phone in front of me. And when I was reading your book, I had the privilege of having a pre read before it was released. And one of the things I've written down here is there's a single question that the whole book is written around, this single
Mhm.
question that you should ask yourself. And I don't know whether you want to reveal the question or whether you want to
Oh,
just create
we can reveal it. Yeah. Everyone
the
needs to have it rolling in their head on repeat, you know.
so tell us about the single question. And I'm curious to, out of all the questions in the world around money that you could have chosen, why did you choose this particular question?
Yeah. One, we picked it because it's short and it doesn't use any fancy words. Like there are some very simple words in there. The question is, what's it for? And um, you can, it's almost like if you're trying to meditate, in my instance, I always say trying to meditate. I don't know if I ever actually have, but I would try. And when they're teaching you to meditate, they'll say like your mind goes somewhere and just bring it back to the breath in, out, in, out. And I feel
Mm,
like that question is a little bit of the same way. It's like if you ever kind of lose your money footing, you just kind of have to go back and say, okay, what's my money for?
mm,
And that question is deep because when you look at what we do to get the money, before we can even answer the question of what it's for, we have to ask ourselves, well, what are we doing to get it? And you and I are doing this right now to hopefully get a little bit of money. We go to school and get a degree maybe because we think that'll help us with our money. I chose accounting because it would get me money with a sure job.
mm,
We work hard in high school maybe to get a scholarship to go to university, and the scholarship is money. We network to get money. I mean, we
mm.
give up brain power, calories, so much time away from family and friends and other pursuits, all for money.
Yeah.
And we usually relegate money to this place if we're doing it bad, but we think we're good, it's usually like it's a chore, it's a to-do, and maybe you stay on top of it, right? That's pretty good. That's better than average for sure. But when you look at how much of yourself you put into money, isn't it just so crazy that it's so groundbreaking to ask someone what that is for, that they are giving their life for? And when you see it that way, I hope people can't unsee it. And I hope it elevates money in their mind where they're like, wait a minute, I am giving up a significant amount of my life to acquire this thing that I've been told you shouldn't want because then you'll be greedy, or you should save, but then you're kind of a hoarder, or you shouldn't spend. Now you're kind of a miser. It's like all these different labels we have for these supposed extremes. And instead of just being like, I give my life for this and I don't even know what it's for. And that's a real interesting moment, I hope, for people.
It really is. And I remember when I started to read the book, I was like, what's the question? What is this one question? And then I read it and I was like, of course, like this is what we're taught at school. I have two boys, they're at school right now. We are still teaching children to learn about jobs that probably won't exist in the next
Oh
12
my
months.
gosh, yeah.
We get started on that conversation, but I feel like we are teaching children to chase a job that gives them money, that enables them to pay their bills and live in their homes and do these different things. And then I was thinking, well, surely it's what sits underneath that matters the most, which is what
Yeah.
you're getting to the core at, right? In this question, like what's it for? What is it for? What is the purpose of every pound that is coming into your account? What job are you giving it? And I loved on page 11 of your book, actually, I've written this down. You said, how much of yourself are you exchanging for it?
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, that's such a powerful question.
And it's not meant to say you should give less or more of yourself to get it. It's just
Mm,
meant to raise the person's awareness. Some people, I think I'm one of them, naturally inclined to kind of just lean into work, think about it a lot. If I tried to turn it off, I'd be pretending, you know? Um,
mm,
Even when we got delayed in South Carolina, I was probably still going on work in my mind, you know? And I don't
mm.
hold it against myself or anyone else. It's like I'm actually grateful for people that kind of work crazy and build amazing things that I then benefit from. Like, that's not a bad deal. And I'm also totally okay with someone being like, I just like earning money is not my thing. It doesn't light them up. I get that too. But the question still remains like what you're giving, you know? Um, doesn't that mean that how you use the resource that you've then acquired, doesn't that mean that that matters perhaps more than we've been taught? And if we're doing average by kids in school, we'll teach them. I mean, they still sometimes teach kids how to balance a check register here in the United States. Like I, I gave a young woman a check and she didn't know what I was handing her. My daughter, bless her heart, her job at the time in the work was to gather the mail, scan all the mail, and then shred it. She scanned a check that was a tax refund for like 10 grand. It was a business check, a business, scanned it and shredded it from the great state of New Jersey that I had to then tell, like, I need another one. Guys, can you please send that again? And she was like, Dad, you said it. I was like, oh my gosh, of course. She's never seen a check, you know?
Yeah.
So we, we're teaching these kids how to do money, like what the system is like, but we're not teaching them like this exchange that they're making, and at least just elevating their awareness of what they're going to be giving of themselves, and then why it might matter to decide how you want to use it and what that money's for.
What I'm interested as well is your view here on if if that's what we're teaching kids, then actually the way that money is going to circulate is already changing. And it
Mhm.
actually, if you think about a decentralized world where money is not held by the banks, but it's held by us individually, I think this question, what is it for, is going to be even more important than it already is, because we have to be able to hold a lot of trust in ourselves, that we trust ourselves to
Yeah.
hold and be the custodian of this money and not the banks, which I think is a great move, having spent
Oh,
20
I would.
years in the
Yeah.
banking sector. But what are your thoughts on how like decentralization and how those things are going to change and evolve the way that we are with money over the
Oh, I
years?
hope it does. I hope it does. I hope we
Mm,
look at much more of a democratized custody. And
mm,
I want people to become much more comfortable with custodying value and not just outsourcing it to some massive institution that says, we have this for you, including the government itself. One of the interesting points there is this money that we work so hard for, and to see how governments, and I mean all governments across the world, like they all, if they have at any moment they decide we are going to use what's a fiat currency, a currency backed by nothing. The UK does it, the US does it,
mm,
most countries do it. Um, as soon as they do that, they can devalue our very money that we've given ourselves to earn. They can they can take it. And they don't take it in a way that's like, hey, here's your bill, pay your devaluing bill. They just take it by virtue of it worth less. And eggs suddenly, I say suddenly, over decades costing far too much. So that the
yeah.
idea of inflation being one of these things that our money is for against our wishes, against our will, it would be fascinating to have that slow value drain suddenly stop for people. Imagine, I mean, Catherine, imagine this because you're in this world. Imagine a grandma of 75 years old that has saved up all this money and could retire by
Mm,
simply having her money saved and slowly spend it, not having to invest it, not having to put it at risk to stay ahead of inflation, but just have it. That used to be the
mm,
case. You know, you had your money and it was actually worth more and more as time went on because technology would improve. But you have me on a totally
mm.
separate tangent. That was very devious of you to do that. But it's something I find so interesting because when I care so deeply about how people decide what their money is for, and you know that um, governments all up and down all across the world do this where they take some of that money through the system itself. Yeah, just it gets me. It gets me good. Yeah.
But that's what I'm excited for. Like, I think that
Yeah.
it will change and it is changing. And I think a lot of systems are breaking down. Like we talk on the podcast about these old operating systems no longer being
Yeah.
fit for purpose. And I think that we are seeing it a lot. And I totally hear what you're saying. I remember giving advice to clients where they were just coming up to retirement and then inflation suddenly changes and they have to carry on working for another 3 years. And then
Yeah.
actually one of their partners, because of general old age, gets poorly. And, and they never get to really live the life because they've been told that they need to stockpile, 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 and then use all that money in retirement. And then they die a year after
Yeah.
they've retired and haven't enjoyed that money. And I think that, yeah, I think that there's a real beauty in just this question. What is it for? What personal agency do you want to take with making the decisions for you? And I know the for you is one of the pots within your
Yes.
framework. So tell us a little bit about the framework that you've created when you're trying to decide how to, I can never say the word, like compartmentalize. Yes, I said it.
Yes. Yeah.
Money into different pots. Tell us a little bit about
Yeah.
those.
Yeah. I mean, the question what's it for is like infinitely depth, deep. But there are only five answers. And that's this framework that every answer would fit into one of these five. And the five are that the money can be for now, it can be for later, it can be for ease in the system itself, make the system easy. It can be for you, and it can be for change. And having all five is very important because it has the person then consider all of you can't consider all. Consider enough possibilities that they're doing the most important thing that they can do with their money, which is understand the trade-offs they are making and make the trade-off they would like. We are always making trade-offs.
Mm,
Always. Thomas Sowell said, you're making a trade-off whether you know it or not. And that is absolutely true. So we're sometimes doing this interesting thing where we'll look at our bank balance. If you're bad with money, you use the bank balance as your information source on can I spend or not. And that is definitionally, that is a bad thing to do. So
mm,
they look at their bank balance and they're feeling kind of flush for whatever reason. Maybe payday just happened. And so they think, oh, I can go out and spend. I can do this, or that. It's going to be a great weekend, you know? And then they realize, I don't know, the following Wednesday, like their car starts making a funny noise. And the car problem has actually been 6 months in the making, right? But they view it as like, oh my gosh, this always happens to me. You know, my car always breaks. Well, like newsflash, everybody's car is always on its way to breaking, right?
At least every
And
couple of years.
every couple of years, it's going to get you good, and it's always going to be at the most inopportune time. So when they are doing these, when they know that their answers are one of those five, they can be like, well, some of my money's for now, and they're like, yeah, it's for this weekend. Good. Decide how much, enjoy yourself, and don't give it another thought. Some of it's for later, meaning I should set some of this pile of money aside for car repairs, car tires, I don't know, summer camp for the kids, the holiday spending, name your thing. Everyone can start thinking of things that they would want money for later. And in doing that, it's like they've made this trade-off where instead of saying, I'm going to trade stability and having money for a car repair for a fun weekend, they were making that trade before. Now they're looking at it and they're saying, I don't like that trade. I'm going to do it a little different. I'm going to carve out a little. And they make a good decision. Like objectively, they make a better decision. And it can be, I mean, I can give so many examples. Like sometimes I'll use the example of like, you go out to sushi 12 times a year, or, you know, Christmas doesn't have as much stress attached to it. People don't know that they're making that trade, but they
Mm.
really are. And I want people to have the trade-off right in front of their face and be like, do I want a worry less Christmas, or do I want to eat high-end sushi, you know, all the time? It's okay if you choose the sushi, but I just want you to make sure you know what you are choosing. That is, I will never say don't eat sushi, and I will never say don't have. I'm like, have both, have one or the other. But it's, I want the person to know that they're trading something there, and when they do, their best decision surfaces, not mine, not yours, but the person's best decision surfaces. So that's the key thing about having all five in front of you and considering all five. It's a little bit like a golf swing. It's like the whole swing is important, but when we're working on the swing, we might kind of focus on one little spot, maybe the backswing, maybe the follow through, maybe something in the middle. I'm not a coach, but all of it is in play, but you can kind of say like, I'm going to focus on this component now. So maybe for now, maybe you're feeling really stressed and we just have to get a grip on the bills right now in front of you. Yes, that's where we'll start. And then we can slowly work our way. And it gets more and more fun as you go.
It's interesting because I think a lot of us kind of did this in lockdown, in COVID. I don't know
Yeah.
what your experience was like, but I think having more time to just pay attention to the decisions that we were making and not being, not having consumeristic influences on us in some ways, but certainly
Mhm.
not as much as we did. I think that was a really interesting time. I know a lot of people saved a lot more money, but a lot of people
Yes.
didn't because they were furloughed or had income stopping and different scenarios. But that's what interests me is that for a lot of our audience, they're neurodivergent, right? And so a
Mhm.
lot of their spending habits can be driven by that instant dopamine rush that they want
Yes.
in that moment that is often created by consumerism because they're scrolling on their phone, something's on an ad, oh, I'll quickly buy that, and actually not necessarily thinking about those different purposes.
Yeah.
What what would you say to anyone who is maybe a little bit more susceptible to the dopamine hits, the adrenaline
Yeah.
rushes?
You're
Any
talking about
any
two of
words
my
of
kids for
wisdom?
sure. Two, maybe more, but no, we
One
know
of
for certain
mine.
two of them. Yeah. Um, yeah, I'm not an expert in that arena. I do know that there's something about our software itself. This isn't a pitch for the software, but maybe I can just kind of brainstorm with you a little bit. There's
Yeah, please
something about
do.
how this software interface itself, where people are allocating their dollars, their pounds to different jobs, and they're saying it's for this, it's for this. For some
Mm,
reason, in the ADD, ADHD community, it's like that little game of compartmentalizing and moving money seems to really click with them
mm,
in a way where we've had people say like, this is the first thing that worked for me. And I wish I could be like, oh, it's because of this study and this thing, and there's a growing body of research over here. I can't say that, but I can just see like anecdotally over thousands and thousands and thousands of stories, specifically of people that live with their brain functioning in that way, that there's something about that way of thinking about their dollars that it kind of gives them the dopamine. I think it's satisfying to them in a way where
Yeah.
instead of scrolling on their phone, we'll have people say, oh, I just scroll through YNAB and kind of see all the money in its spots, and it gets them there. So, I mean, there are other tactics you can use, like the thing that triggers you try and decrease, right? If you've been sober for a long time, I avoid certain environments where those triggers are just hitting me constantly, right? And
Yeah.
we would want to avoid scrolling where those triggers happen. And it's not a willpower thing. It's not. It's far
Mm.
beyond that. You're just like, oh, you should try harder. It's nothing to do with trying harder. It's just kind of thinking strategically, like, okay, when it's late at night and I've had a long day, that's when I want to eat the ice cream. I don't pull it out at 10 in the morning. And so is there a way I could, like when I'm clear headed, is there a way I can set myself up where that won't get me? Because the willpower is not in play, you know? I'm like lizard brain at that point, you know? And that's the part where I find it interesting, but I can only say, like, just from so much feedback from that community specifically, that there's something about, I don't know if it's the interface or the way it works or the way they think about it differently that we teach, where it tends to kind of land pretty well. It's really been gratifying to see. It's totally accidental on my part, but really fun to see.
Well, well done on the accidental orchestration of that,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
I, having spoken from like when I was in that situation in my 20s, I think it does make a difference. But I think the pattern for me is that when you talk about the ease category in those
Yes.
five categories, like for me, if you are an overspender because of neurodivergence or whatever reason, there could be other reasons for it, of course. I think one of the aspects that I love about one of the pots that you've allocated there for ease is that actually, if I was to create a savings pot, that doesn't do it for me. Like the word
Yes.
savings just doesn't give me the same emotional response as the word ease or peace or freedom or whatever that word might be for you. So I love that play on words where you've brought in this framework of, now, money for later, money for you, and money for change, so that if
Mhm.
the car does break down or you want to change careers or, something
Yeah.
happens, that you've got money parked already for that purpose.
Yeah, the
Yeah, I
change one
really.
is fun because it's kind of saying, like, I mean, if we've elevated money in your mind and we've said, like, you've given a lot of yourself to get it, like, think about
Mm,
ways that money can be used just to handle change that comes at you. Maybe it's an illness as a negative. Maybe it's a positive, like you suddenly get a raise or something. It can be anything in between. Maybe you find out you're going to have a baby. That's change, right? We see that a lot, actually, babies and being married, where people are like, okay, we got to get things going, right? But
yeah.
there also can be change where your money can be used for affecting a change from you that you want, where you say, man, this job is not doing it for me. I'm going to change things. And we've had people write in stories that are like, I took a pay cut because I realized I could. And they realized that some of their money could be used for taking a better job, and all that money that they lost is such a gain for them because they've won back
Yeah,
sleep,
I love
health, a
that.
commute, who knows what it may be, purpose. So it's just really neat to see. At the end of the day, we're seeing the agency of the person expand as they bring money in, not as some little tool or some to do or some chore, but they're bringing money in to help them be a more accurate, authentic agent for themselves to
Yeah.
handle change and to make change in their life.
And what a beautiful segue to a final question that I wanted to ask you, Jesse. So, if it's not about the money, what is it really about for you personally?
It's the legacy. It's the kids. I don't mean business legacy. I don't mean anything like that. I mean, just they get, 7 kids. And if you have 7, that means you can get it right with probably 3 of them, so I hope we do. I, it really is that, like, you do so much and you're just looking for what is something lasting. And that for me is lasting. Everything else comes and goes, but like what you teach, sometimes what you accidentally teach, which is scary as a parent, but sometimes the things you accidentally teach, good or bad, I might have a son that's like, I'm not going to do it the way my dad did it, and they're going to do it better, and that also is a good thing. So that for me is all of it.
Yeah, I love that. What a great response. Well, thank you so much, Jesse, for coming on the show today and sharing the framework and the thesis of your second book. I'm really excited for all of our community to get their hands on it. It is now available to buy, and we'll pop a link in the show notes to where you can go find the book and some of the extra resources as well that Jesse and his team have put together for you, as well as a link to the YNAB app if you want to go check it out. Then we'll pop all of those in the show notes. But thank you so much, Jesse, for your time today. It's been great to understand more about this book, and congratulations.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me on, Catherine.
Thanks, Jesse. And I'll see you guys on the show next Monday. Take care, guys.